Hey Ben,
Hello, how you doing? You all right?
I'm all right, although I'm a little bit annoyed because everybody in the chat seems to be loving this brilliant sunshine and clear skies, and I think it's been raining since Thursday here. Am I
Yeah,
about
what's this
right?
sunshine on about? I
I have
haven't seen
no
anything
idea.
for a while now.
It's definitely been raining since Thursday, and
Yeah, I think for a week as well, I think.
we've had fire alarms and all sorts of things to stand in the rain in, haven't we? It's been marvelous. But
Yeah, I just want to point out, last week you were saying about my to-do list. It's actually
oh,
empty
look
now.
at
I've
that.
got one thing on there for weeks, and now it's all gone. I'm empty now. So
Awesome. He's not only inbox zero, he's also to-do list zero. Fantastic.
yeah, that's it.
And a few comments coming in about haircuts, Ben. Have you had one?
Yeah, I got a bit of a BTEC haircut. I was a bit of a model for some training hairdressers, and it did go a little bit wrong. But the kids have said I've got a fly haircut. Now, apparently, that means it's a good haircut.
Right. Okay.
So I've got a fly haircut. So yes, I have had a haircut, and it's. I thought it wasn't that great, but kids are saying it's fly. So I've learned a new word this week as well.
I think it's fair to say as well, your eyebrows are on fleek.
Oh mate, I've had them done. I've been to the shop. I've had them all tinted, all glossed up. The lot, mate. I've had everything.
Good for you. It's important. Manscaping's important, right?
That's it. That's
and
exactly.
We should be able to talk about it, and it's good to talk, isn't it?
That's it. That sort of brings us right on to our point, doesn't it? Really?
Does it? It's almost like we planned that.
I wouldn't go that far in advance, mate.
No, definitely not. No. So this evening, as you well know, we are very, very, very excited to welcome a good friend of ours who is an EdTech consultant. This might take an hour in itself just to read through Steph's bio, to be fair. But she's an EdTech consultant. She's a public speaker. She's a Google innovator and trainer. She's a teacher on special assignment, which I like to think is kind of like being part of the A-team. In my mind, that's what that is. You know, maybe in charge of welding and making vehicles into tanks and things like that. She's done a cracking TED talk. She's done all sorts of different programs and projects, and has also helped out so many people with various different support groups online. And I think it's fair to say, I think you'll agree with me, Ben, possibly the nicest person I've ever met.
I think you're exactly right, mate. I don't think I've met anyone kinder than Miss Stephanie Rothstein herself.
No, well, only in the mirror, obviously.
Oh yeah, well, can't help it, mate. Look at me.
Absolutely, yeah. But you know, Steph comes a close second to you, Ben.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Should we get her on then?
Let's do it.
Let's bring her in. Hey, Steph.
There you go.
Hey,
there we go.
Thank you for unmuting me. That was the nicest intro. I felt bad. I thought that when I typed it in your lovely pre-show document, I thought, oh, that'll just be what's published after. And then I realized, oh no, he's going to need to read that. Yeah, sorry about that. That was too long. But thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you all.
It's a pleasure. You know, you've helped us with many of our global GEG events, and now it's only fair to have you with GEG UK and Short and Sweet doing a session with us. So it's our pleasure.
So awesome. Yeah, I am very happy to be here. So yeah, as when I was asked, I was like, oh, really, me? So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Right, let's get your slide deck up and running, shall we?
I do. Yes, let's do it.
Let's
do it. Feels so professional. You helping me put the slide deck up and everything.
There we go. Right. Okay.
In there as well. Just got to say, before you go any further, I really like those gifts on them to the orange and yellow speech bubbles there.
It's snazzy, isn't it?
I know. Snazzy. It's fly.
It is fly. I don't know if it's as fly as your haircut and eyebrows, but it's pretty fly. It's pretty fly.
I'd say that.
It definitely is. So
I was in the back cheering when other people brought up your haircut, because if they didn't, I was going to bring it up when I came on.
So. I could see you waving and clapping in the background, Steph.
Yeah,
you should. I mean, if people didn't know it, when I was a senior in high school, I worked at a hair salon. So I would have commented on your hair.
There you go. Fantastic. So, Steph, first of all, just tell us. Obviously, I went through your bio a little bit, but for those people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and where this has come from.
Okay, I am happy to. So, for those who don't know me, I think we have a lot of familiar faces in the chat, but if you're watching this back or if I haven't met you before, hello, I'm Stephanie Rothstein. I go by Steph or Stephanie, either way is fine. And I am from Northern California. I was originally born in Southern California, but still California through and through. So here in the US. And I've been an educator for 18 years. And over the last couple of years, I've moved into doing kind of part-time role, both in the classroom. I chair a design thinking pathway. I teach the English 9 component of that pathway, and I help other people in my pathway with project building and design. But in addition to that, I am, as you mentioned, a TOSA teacher on special assignment, and I support ed tech in my district, and then have been starting to do some projects outside of that. I am one of the founders of Global GEG, and I also run the co-chair the GEG NorCal, or co-lead, I should say. I love leading with other people, so that's a piece about me that you should know, is I often find people that I gravitate towards, and it's why I love doing projects with others. I find it helps me grow. And so Can We Talk came out of Global EDU. I had been doing this kind of personality assessment in my classroom prior to even becoming a teacher, I should say. Actually, I learned about it in college when I was helping out. I was hired as a CALSO, so a student orientation counselor, and then I ran that orientation program for Cal, for UC Berkeley. And there were 4 students that would run that program along with having a director, and they had us take a Myers-Briggs personality assessment, a super long one, like 500 question. I mean, like the most lengthy one that you could ever take. And doing that kind of set me on a journey of going, this is quite interesting to think about how learning about my own personality and others that I'm working with applies to the way that we do work together. And as I became a teacher, I started to look for what would be a more applicable way to do something like that with students and help them learn how to talk to each other. And I found a version that I thought was a bit more student friendly. And then I realized it actually helped beyond students in my classroom. I gave a presentation at Global. That presentation actually came about when we were having a little, I'll say it nicely, like growing pains, I think. You know, our group had been growing, and we were just getting to learn about each other and connect. And some people, I think, run really fast and others wait a little bit. And we needed a way to actually learn how to talk to each other and approach one another. So I offered to give this talk. I offered to do it internally. And then the founding group said, why don't you just give a presentation on it? And after that, it kind of blew up from there. And I realized that was my next innovator project. I hadn't planned it to be. And then after giving the talk and getting feedback and hearing that other people wanted to implement it in their classrooms, then I grew that into becoming my newest innovator project.
That's phenomenal.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I must admit, I went through a Myers-Briggs, I don't know, assessment, I suppose you call it, don't you?
Yep.
Probably about 8 years ago now. We did it as part of our senior leadership team, ahead of a recruitment process, actually, because we wanted to, actually, someone that we'd worked closely with suggested that we analyse what skills we'd already got within our team and what kind of personalities we'd already got, and then look to recruit in the gaps that were missing. And it, like you say, it was a real eye-opener. So I won't steal too much of what we're going to talk about, but certainly that's why I was so keen to get you on and to talk about it, because I think it's one of those things that if I'd have paid more attention to it earlier on, I probably would have made different decisions.
It is quite interesting, and I think it helped me to have a boss who really knew how to use it. And so I wrote to him after giving this presentation, Patrick Johnston, if he's out there, but he's wonderful. And he sat me down after I took that Myers-Briggs, and it was really interesting because, you know, it has many options for those letters. There are 4, but, you know, there are 2 ways you can go for each letter. And when I was taking it, the one that is the feeler versus thinker, when I took that back in college, I was 100% F, as they said, feeler.
Yeah.
And like literally, like it was pretty much at 100% there. And then I had other categories that were in the middle. And I remember him like sitting me down and having a talk and saying, this is perfectly fine in your personal life, but you're going to be in a job where you're going to get some criticism. Like you are going to be getting feedback all the time. So you can feel it all you want, but you're going to need to learn how to show a different trait in front of a staff and how to react to that. And that one conversation totally shifted me as a person. And I realized like, okay, in what part of my life is this going to serve me well? And where do I need to grow so that I actually can maybe be in a more business setting and handle that kind of feedback? Or what do I need to do to like still maintain those feelings, but still be able to talk to people in a way that they can hear me? So my personality type, I think, has shifted a lot in those 20 years from that initial conversation, for sure. And I guess it's been, probably at least 20 since then. And it really has changed me as a person. And I think it's changed the way that I approach projects and even this. Yeah.
I think that's important though, right? Because, you know, there's I always had a bit of a bee in my bonnet around. We used to do kind of assessments on students for learning styles when they joined in year 7, which is kind of like the first year of secondary school here in the UK. And then we'd assign a student, every student had their preferred learning style. And then we never revisited it. And I was always, it does not stay the same for 5 years, for 7 years. You know, it changes based on your own experiences, you know, your own maturity and everything else. And it really used to annoy me that everything would often come back to, well, this is their preferred learning style. So yeah, it was at that point, you know, it's 5 years ago, but it doesn't mean it is now. And exactly the same with this. I think I've certainly changed a lot. I used to be, and I'm quite happy to admit it, I used to be very judgmental. I used to be the kind of person who would be like, why are people having time off work? You know, what's wrong with them? Can't they just drag themselves in? And I used to really find it hard to kind of get my head around certain things. And then having had issues within my own family with things like mental health and stuff, it massively shifted the way I perceived everything and my appreciation for what people are going through. And probably I went completely the other way, and probably I think I'm possibly too understanding these days, but like I say, pretty much all feeling. But certainly it's one of those things that I think it's important people realize that you're not one thing and that's it, you know. I
agree. It's you know, I think as you sort of go on that basis about preferred learning style, Darren, you know, I think, you know, some of our, you know, I'll say from my point of view, some of our students, you know, some of the students I teach now, you know, without sort of having to do that initial assessment, you can sort of, just by talking to them, find out which they prefer as well, you know. And as you say, that's going to change over time, depends on, as you say, maturity levels and how they do things as an individual. So, you know, when I first started, we had some really shy students who had only sort of learn by visual, but now they're very much, they can adapt to different styles in different places, you know, depending on what the subject is, who the teacher is, etc. So, you know, I think it's very important that change is, you know, this is leading on to what I did with what I applied for my innovator project. Didn't get in this time, but I'll get in next time, don't worry. But change it doesn't have to be a negative thing, you know, it can be quite a positive thing. And it just depends on how you look on the situation. And as you say there, you know, we do change over time. It's natural that we change. That's part of the process, isn't it? You know, so I think that's really important to recognise.
I think now more than ever as well, with, you know, obviously for lots of us in the UK, we've now got students back in school, but they're being taught in bubbles, but they've been out of school for 5 months. I know a lot of the US and other countries are still teaching virtually. You know, that in itself brings a lot of challenges for the students, and the awareness of how they might deal with it, I think, is so important. Because, you know, like going back to those learning styles, you know, if we label a student as a particular style or a particular color or whatever it might be, and we tell them that's what they are, and then at the same time we're trying to teach them about growth mindsets and failure being it's just completely mixed messages all the time. So I think vitally important.
So maybe do you want to take them through on that next one if people aren't familiar with
Let's do it.
this one? Okay, so so if you're not familiar, if you haven't taken the assessment, it comes from an assessment called True Colors, which was based off of someone named Ketterman. It's back from 1972. It has held strong ever since. Myers-Briggs was from a little bit before that, but there's a great deal of history there, and there have been a bunch in between. So my school and I have done a wide variety. Strengths Quest, I mean, you name it, we've tried it. So for this one, though, there are 4, and it's divided into colors. So our golds are typically really guided by like having a lane, having a purpose, by having some order. A system tends to calm a gold, and they want to know that they're doing things that are, quote, right. And they want that. Our golds tend to be our rule followers. They're great at timekeepers, right? They adhere to the rules that they have been given. Our greens, I would say, don't do that. Our greens are like visionaries, independent thinkers. They're fine with having a view that is different from the rest, and they tend to be those that want to look at big picture versus maybe the small task at hand. Our blues are people that like are guided by their heart, and so connection is really what is at the forefront. Hi, Blue. Is that you, Darren? And guided by those kinds of connections that they can have with other people, and then that sparks them continuing on. If the relationship is broken, they are not able to move forward in terms of the work. And then our oranges are guided by energy, charisma. They're people typically, but they often are those that don't necessarily shy away from limelight. They like things to move really quickly. They like going from one thing to another, and sometimes they are guided by competition. And so like that kind of quick movement, that quicker pace really helps to guide an orange. And often an orange is wondering, like a blue might reach out to understand how you are feeling. An orange typically is wondering, like, how does this apply to me? Like, is this geared at me, or should I be doing something else that is more for me? Right. So I just think everyone is approaching, when you give people a problem or you give them an assignment, or you give them a group or a team, they approach that team through a different lens, and they approach every conversation, every space that they enter through their own lens. And everybody has their own story. This is just one facet of that I think helps us gain a little bit of insight. But I always like to caution and say, it isn't the whole person. We all have many facets to our personality. And there are some days where like certain aspects of our color range might come out more than others. And sometimes it just doesn't apply. But I do think that it helps us. Like, I often find, I don't want to pigeonhole people, but it does help me it helps give me an approach that I can take that might allow me to have a better conversation with someone, and might allow me to work with someone more successfily.
And it's just hearing you describe all of those, it's the first time I've really sort of, really focusing on that and looked at. I've got my sheet up on the side over here, so I'm a heavy gold, really heavy gold, and saying about sort of having a purpose and doing things that will make a difference. That I've never really thought about it before, but that is exactly me. I really do focus on having the little things done, making a difference to people. Having a purpose and structure in my life is a huge thing. Without structure, I find myself very lost. There's not a lot of point doing it. If I haven't got a structure to anything, there's not a lot of point doing it. And it's now you said it, I can link the two together and say, I really am that actually. So it's really good to know.
When you pointed to your empty to-do list and you were all excited, I was like, that's so gold, right? That is so gold.
Well, it's all on Google Keep now. It's not just that was an old board. Before I was a Google trainer, I was just writing everything on paper, old style. So all on digital now. But anyway, that's by the by.
But look at us here. Okay, so you're a gold, and Darren?
Well, I'm predominantly blue, but with quite a lot of green and a fair bit of orange. And yeah, it's what I try and do. I try and put myself on a map. So if you look at those 4 images, I try and think, where am I sitting at the moment? You know, and so I've actually got a Jamboard with that image on it, and I've got my little Bitmoji, and I just move it around.
I love that.
As to how I'm feeling at a particular time. Apart from anything else, it kind of helps me track where I'm at, if you know what I mean. Because there will be times when I'm more gold than blue, and times when I'm more orange than green, you know, depending on what's going on in my life and things like that. But yeah, so I kind of do that, but I'm definitely predominantly blue. I think like blue came out in like the 40s for me, and everything else was in the 30s. But yeah,
it's strange. It's strange to say as well, Dan. My second, the second highest score for me is blue as well. So I'm gold and blue as well. So that's strange, isn't it? You know, like mine, good friends are the same colours. That's really strange.
Well, I mean, I think when you all were talking, you know, you likely do a nice job of like balancing one another, you know, when one isn't so dominant in a particular area, maybe you fill in the gap in the other. My dominant one is green. And I think after presenting this, and even in looking at the way that I am within our global GEG leadership team, it really was only after I presented this that I realized how much of that applies to the way that I approach projects. Like, it just is the way that I have been doing things, I would say, at least the last few years. But I often am someone that I wait to share an idea until I've explored, you know, is it worthy of sharing? And so if I'm saying it, it's because I have looked at all of these other pieces of research before I've shared it, or I want to know what everybody else in the group thinks before I share something, so that I know, like, greens tend to be a bit strategic, right? So waiting for that time, and I hope that doesn't come across in a way that's like calculated, because that's not how I feel about it. But I often really want to know before I say something, like, who am I saying it to? And what is the purpose of it? And where is it going? So greens are always asking the why. And then you've got a gold with you that's like, but we got to get down to business. Like, can we actually just get this done? You know? And I'm sitting there in that. But before we approach it, I'm going to ask you all these questions about it. You know?
And you know, that's exactly, now you say it as well, and put another tie together here. When you were helping me with my innovator project, you asked me the 5 whys. Every question I had was 5 whys to it, and why was this? But why? And you know, it's just now you're talking about it, I can just put all these ties together and think, you know, this is really clever. This is really is good.
But I think that it helps balance, right? There are certain colors that for sure make like really amazing natural pairings. It doesn't mean that you can't have other ones that are not, right? But like, which are the ones that fill in a gap that you don't have, and together, like, you become a stronger pair. So often a green and a gold work really nicely together, because a green might have the vision and then the gold will have that implementation, right? And so, I mean, there are many that will go. An orange and a blue, that one is a harder pairing, to be honest. But if you actually can find them willing to listen and learn from one another, they can fill in a gap really beautifully. Because an orange is going to help bring out like the joy and the fun and keep people happy, and be willing to get up and speak first. And a blue often is worried about sharing and the way that they would be viewed. And so often a blue might hold back on saying how they're really feeling. And if they have a friend who's an orange, that person will go like, hey, wait a minute, we got to think about everybody. Like, they'll just say it without worry about the repercussion. But I think like those are less of a quote natural pair, but can be a really strong one if brought together, for sure.
Definitely. It's like, it is fascinating. And you know, I don't know, I say I don't know, I presume knowing you, or having got to know you over the last sort of 6 months, that you've probably done this with the family as well, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because certain people, and then I often then go like, well, what color would they be? Like, even my own family, like my parents, my mom got super into taking it. My dad was like, I'm not doing this. I don't need to be analyzed like this. But I know who he is, right? Like so often if somebody is questioning the validity of it, right, he might be green like me and going like, well, what's the point in this? Like, you got to, give me the answer before I take it. I already know who he is, so it's fine. But yeah, in my own household with my own children, I think about this too. Like, who are of my 3 girls, who are my ones that when I approach them, I need to approach with a little bit more like heart and tenderness, and who wants to know like what to do right away and calmed by that. I have one child who is for sure calmed by making a list, and she needs that. And then my other one could care less. She's totally an orange. She'll just like get up and she doesn't care. You can like just say to her, oh, present on this right now. She'll go, all right, whatever. My gold would not be like, she is not that way. She gets worked up before it. If she hasn't practiced, she wants to review it. Even when she's doing a flip grid for school, she wants to write out every single thing. And I'm like, just say it. Just say it. It's on a book that you read. You know how to just talk about it. And she's like, no, we need to write down every point. She like needs to know it. And then she'll run through it with me. I'm like, this run through, if we recorded it, you'd be done. But she can't. She just like that. She has to have that run through. Whereas my other one's like, I don't care if a mistake's in there. And we knew that at age 2. Like, she'd be up like for stuff for preschool, twirling around. She could care less who was watching her on the stage. Everybody else is presenting and she's like, whatever, and my other one would stand perfectly straight. And my youngest is probably somewhere in between. I don't know. She's we're still waiting. She's 4, but yeah, I could see her. She might be a little like green orange because she tries to make people laugh a lot, but she knows what she's doing. Like, so there might be some strategy.
And it's one of those things as well where, like you were saying, that sometimes I don't know whether it's me personally or whether, and obviously you've got more experience of it than I have, but I would say that I have a different color for work and personal life. Very much.
Where do you think you are for each?
I'm definitely blue in terms of work, in terms of like the paid job, if you know what I mean. And then for most other things, I'm quite orange, and not just because of the hair. Obviously, that has a massive impact. But yeah, like I won't think twice about standing up in front of an audience and just talking and taking assemblies or getting up and singing or whatever. As you've seen through Global GEG as well. I don't mind making an idiot out of myself for that sort of reason. But I don't like doing it. I'm completely the opposite from a professional point of view, which surprises me.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Do you find people when they do the assessments, Steph? Do you find people are surprised by their colours more, or are people usually a pretty good judge?
That's a good question. I think some of us are more honest in the assessments than others, and some, depending on your color, are worried about being judged even in the way that they take the assessment. So, right, like about how it will turn out. And what it says about them, and maybe they have preconceptions around what it means to be a particular one, or if they will be viewed as either like too strict or too soft. I'm using these all in quotes, right? So I think sometimes people prejudge themselves as opposed to just going like, that's my natural tendency, and so what do I do with that? And so, like, when I approach it in school with my students, that's how I say it. And I often say, okay, if in a moment of like you get really bad news or you have to make a really quick decision, like which of these is going to guide that for you? And that's how I often, like, if a student is having trouble, right? Are you guided by knowing what is the right answer? Or are you guided by, I'm going to make my own choice? Or are you guided by your heart? Or are you guided by, I'm just going to do this thing and see what happens? And like, you know, and some of those, it might depend on the problem that you're approaching, the way that you approach it. But I do find that when I finally talk to students about it and they really deeply start to think, they go, oh, okay, when I'm with my parents, sometimes I'll put on this, or this will come out more. Or when I'm with my friends, this aspect of it will happen more. And then we'll talk about which parts of that personality align most with like what would help you at school. And I often think that we gear school towards particular personality types, wrongly so. Like we alienate others, saying like it, like, and what I want to do in my classroom and in my space, and what I hope to do in education, is that we embrace them all, right? That there isn't a way to be like a good student, a quote, good student. And I often think that good students get labeled as one of these color types. And that for me is a really hard place to be, because my goal is not to make everyone one of these. And so what I hit at over and over is we need them all.
Yeah.
If I don't have all of them in a classroom, like if I have all of one in a classroom, it will be a horrible class.
Yeah.
It will be a horrible class.
And that's a really special point.
Mm-hmm.
That's really special. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, please.
That's a really, really powerful point, because, you know, we are all different. We're all unique in our own way. And that's something that personally, maybe I'm not afraid to say it, but, you know, something I maybe struggled to accept, you know, who I really am. I've always sort of struggled fitting in those big groups. And for me to, you know, I'm always sort of thinking, you know, I'm sort of the odd one out, etc. You know, it's about embracing who you are. And, you know, we should be, as educators and leaders, we should be sort of embracing every child's ability to do whatever they want to do, embracing them and, you know, encouraging them to be good people and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, you can get there by doing different things. You don't have to follow a route. You know, it's, you know, in calculation, one pathway to get to that stage. You can, you know, everyone's going to be slightly different, and that's okay. That's okay to be different. You don't, you know, if everyone was the same, it'd be very, very boring. You know, so I think that's really, really important that we do embrace students for who they are and the things they, you know, the places they want to go and the way they want to get there.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think helping students to realize that we all have areas of growth, and that, you know, like if there's an aspect that you want to learn from a different trait or that you want to grow in, it's not fixed, as Darren was talking about earlier, right? That it is totally possible. You just have to, you have to figure out how to bring that out in yourself. It's not an easy or a natural thing if it isn't your way to know how to approach a situation and grow in that way, right? So like asking a goal to do something that doesn't feel very gold, it's going to be a challenge. And that's like growth is meant to be hard, or else you wouldn't be learning from it. If it was easy, we'd all be like lovely growers all the time, right? But it involves challenge and it involves strife, and that brings about learning. So that has been, I think that has been one of the biggest epiphanies that I've had this year, is just as when Darren, when you were saying that we would give something at the start of the year and then did we really use it? I kept saying, like, am I really using this for all of its capabilities with my students, with my staff, with my family, even with my parents? So I present about this at back to school night, and I asked the parents to try to guess, you know, their own student's personality color. And then I go through it and I asked them to talk to their student about it. And I had many parents write about how that changed the dynamic of conversations. I had one person write recently asking me for feedback on how to approach her child, knowing that her child is a blue, in a way that her child doesn't get upset, like when trying to give feedback. And I just thought, like, how amazing that I've got a parent who's like, how can I do this better? You know? And I just think that's the approach that we all need to have. And it might mean that I'm learning from a different approach from a different personality style, right? Like for me as a green, there might be times where I really do need to go like, okay, but it's due in 2 days. Like we've got to finally hone in on what we're actually doing so that other people in my group don't freak out. And, you know, and so then I have to learn how to learn from them and then check in and make sure like, okay, did I stay in the clouds too long here, everybody? All right, do we have a process that everybody's okay with? And check in terms of like knowing that everybody's voice has been heard, because greens can often become independent and just go off and do the things that they want to do. So one of the things I've learned is I've got to approach people and ask, you know, what do you think about this idea? Do you have something else? Is there something I should add to it before moving forward? Like I have to be thoughtful in my approaches when working with a group, because I could just like keep going on my own little like cloudy train here.
Totally. I mean, it's a lot like, I suppose, in a way, whether you're leading a class, whether you're leading a school, you're leading a staff or a team or whatever, it's equally powerful to know what characteristics and what traits you've got within your team. But then it's almost, I suppose, a little bit like De Bono's thinking hats, in that sometimes you've got to be right. I need to wear the blue one with this member of staff or with this student, but actually time's against us. I need to wear the gold hat as well, or I might need to wear both, you know, and maybe thinking about it from that sort of perspective might help people as well. I can certainly think of, you know, times in the past where understanding better what people were like that I'd line managed, for example, particularly in the early days of working with them, if I'd known from the start, I would have done things completely differently. And would have popped on, you know, my green hat or my blue hat sort of thing specifically for that person, but then having the same conversation with someone else, done it in a completely different way.
Totally.
But when you're up against it with time and everything else, the temptation is to kind of go, well, that's my approach and let's go with it, you know. Like
it might even be trying to pre-develop like your initial question with that person when you begin that, like just that sit down, that conversation, right? If they're an orange, it might be starting and like laughing about something together. And if it's a blue, then it might be really just asking deeply how they're doing and showing that you actually care to hear the response before you get into the work. And if it's a gold, it might be showing that you have like, here's a list of what we have and what I've done. Where are you in this process, right? Like, and if it was a green, asking why they chose to do something, like approaching them in a way that they have a response to share that shows that they're valued. And I think those are the pieces that really have helped me to go, who's sitting in front of me and what conversation, like I need to begin where they are. Not where I am. And that has shifted for me the way that I approach students for sure. And everyone else. But yeah, like I can't begin where I am. It's not going to do them any good.
No. One of the things that interests, oh, sorry, Ben, go on.
Oh, no, cool, mate. You go on. I'll keep thinking about it first.
I was going to say, one of the things that really kind of interests me is, and I don't know whether this will be the case, but have you noticed that any students now that we're working remotely or have been working remotely have been completely different to how they are when they're in the school building?
That's a good, you know, that's harder for me to know because I started with all 9th grade this year. So new to the school, new to me.
Yeah.
But for sure, I can say I have seen every year, like the pathway that I teach in, I see them at 9th grade and I see them all the way through. I don't teach them, but I go to all the graduations and, you know, I'm with them for all of the different social events. And I see
party animals then.
I try. But I see them like in their growth as people.
Yeah.
And in the way that they approach things. And often they will talk to me about that. But some for sure, it's harder, this like being alone than others. And those are the students for whom I have seen the biggest shift. And it's more that like they're used to that feedback from other people. And that is what fuels their personality. Some might say it's like on the extrovert introvert piece, but I would say it tends to be if if you are like, if it livens you up to be around other people in your personality trait, so oftentimes that goes for blue and orange, that for those they're less sure of how to do it right now, and some like, and figuring out how to approach in a classroom setting. I have some students that are for sure comfortable with the unmuting of the mic, but it's different than sitting in a room with somebody and being able to turn to a person and ask how they're doing. And so like trying to find spaces where people feel like they actually can share those deeper things than when you're in class.
100% as well. That's where, like, through lockdown, the global staff room was an absolute lifesaver for me. And obviously that led to global GEG as well, and meeting so many wonderful, open, honest people. And when I say honest, both, with positives and negatives. We're not afraid to have difficult conversations with each other and redirect each other and things like that. But had it not been for that, I think I would have really, really struggled, because we live in a village. So other than going shopping, I never really left the house for the best part of 5 months. But because of everything we were doing online together and the staff room and all that kind of stuff, I felt like I'd traveled the world. And it was just brilliant. I was buzzing.
I sort of second that point as well. With the global staff room, very similar to you, Darren. I felt a lot of love and support coming from a lot of honest people, and I wouldn't have met the inspiring people that I have known now, if I hadn't been to the staff room. And for me, as most people watching this probably would already know, I was really, really ill back in March with COVID, and still suffering long-term effects of it. But it was a very lonely time. I couldn't see my partner. I couldn't go to work and do the things I love to do at work. I was very much isolated and on my own. And the global staff room, meeting those wonderful people and giving me something I can focus on, being the gold that I am, giving me those things that I can focus on and help out and feel like I have a purpose to get up every day, really did support me. And I don't know what situation I would have found myself in if I didn't have some form of that structure and positivity during lockdown. That really would have made it quite an impact on me, I think. I hadn't had that.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't be the youngest Google certified trainer in the world, Ben.
Yeah, that's true. We had to get a plug in there for that as well. You plug it more than me now, but I wouldn't be the youngest Google certified trainer in the world. No, you're right.
No, absolutely. And just a reminder at the bottom of the screen there, Global Staff Room is on tonight, straight after the show. So if you do want to join, head over to Twitter and you can pick up the link from Kat Lamin and come and join us as part of the staff room. I'm sure we'll be there for a chat and a giggle.
Yeah,
because it's a real lifesaver. Okay.
Love it. I mean, Ben, when you were sharing, I think it's just, as Darren would say, it's just brilliant to know how much something that was like a regular set piece, that it provided a routine during this time when things were pretty chaotic for you, and
to have 2 or 3 a week and just chatting with lots of people, and these people I've never met, but the amount of the overwhelming support I'd got, and everyone checking in on me and my health all the time, really, surprising. I got more support from some of the people in this global staff from asking how I am and if there's anything they can support me with and stuff like that. I had more of that from people maybe I hadn't met than people that I thought were my friends in real life. And I say real life, but I've met in person. I mean, but it's
You've got a lot of orange friends, Ben.
Yeah, I do, mate. You're one of them, aren't you? But it's so overwhelming to me that people I haven't met are so willing to support me and help me. Like yourself with my innovative project, you spent a long time with me trying to put all that together and stuff like that, and that sort of thing just means the world to me. It's just, I can't thank the people enough from the staff room, that's for sure. But I'll be forever in debt. But that's
we just had a comment in from Marilyn, actually. It's just like just said, can we discuss why we think it happens that we get almost more love from people that we've not known for very long than often that we do from the people we do know? What do you think, Steph?
That's a good question. At least I thought about for me anyway, and my greenness, that I often come from a place of thinking if somebody wants to tell me something, they will tell me. Like, I don't need to pry. And I've then come to realize that people need to be like shoulder tapped or asked a question in order for them to feel seen. Like, I assume if somebody wants me to know something, they're going to just come out and tell me. But then I've learned that through talking with other people that they don't know that that's okay to do. And so it means like I've got to reach outside of myself a little bit, learn from the blues, and ask and check in a little bit more, and really, really ask that question. And so I think with people that I know best, I might not be as good at that because I assume they will they'll pick up the phone and just share it with me. And if they're not, it's because they don't want to. And maybe it's the wrong assumption on my part. But with people that I don't know, maybe, I'm a little bit more like approaching it because I'm like, oh, they don't know me. Maybe they don't feel safe to share yet. So I'm going to ask questions. And maybe those are things I should be doing in my whole life and not just with people that I don't see often or know as well, or quote know as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No. Like you say, it is a tough one. I think from my perspective, I think there is that element, like you say, of not complacency, but like you say, with newer people, you're probably a little bit more alert. Possibly because of the blue in me is thinking about, what are they thinking of me? So therefore, I maybe try a little bit harder. Whereas people that I know really well, I know they know me. But I don't know whether it's a thing in the US, but in the UK certainly we have this thing where you see somebody at work in the corridor in a town, and you won't say hello, how are you, and have a proper conversation. You'll just be like, how you doing? All right, and the stock answer will be yeah, I'm okay. You all right? Yeah, all good. And it doesn't mean anything at all. It's just you reply that because that's what the other person is expecting to hear. And and I used to have a colleague actually who was Scottish and had quite a dry sense of humour. And if somebody would ask him, "How you doing?" he would literally tell them everything. And then when they started going, "Oh," he'd go, "Well, you asked," and he would do it just to wind them up. But actually, I suppose it leads into and links in with your TED talk. Your year of yes for you is actually, are we just responding for other people's benefit because we think that's what they want to hear, rather than for ourselves as well? Do we keep it quiet because we think other people don't want to be bothered? Do we, think everybody else has got a more difficult life than we have because we're on that's often not very good at self-assessing our own situation against other people's, particularly these days with social media, and everyone's got wonderful photos everywhere and no one's ever miserable, and I think that's made it a lot harder.
It does make it a challenge for sure. I mean, I think one of the biggest takeaways is realizing that your approach is not the only approach, no matter what the situation is, right? And trying to figure out then, who are you doing this for? And so, like, I think there's got to be a balance, right? You have to know what your role is in this conversation or in this dynamic or in this group or in this project, but you also need to care deeply about the roles and what other people are bringing to the table. And if you only care that you have your own idea, then you should go be on your own island just doing that. But like, what's the point in being in a team if you're only going to hear yourself talk? So I think that, it's about finding that balance, learning how to listen sometimes more than what you share, and really listening, I think, becomes a big key. And then I don't know if we want to put on the next slide starts to even talk about the approaches to this project. So these were some of the applications that came out of this. If you aren't familiar on Can We Talk EDU, I have ways that you can then implement it in your own classroom. And then what continued with the project was then what to do with it. So how do you share out about it? In my own class, we did the one that's in the bottom right. So we had students we gave them the option of a phone case, a notebook, or a hydro flask. That's like one of those like big water bottles, those metal water bottles usually. And we had them in all different of the 4 colors in the gray space of a slide, a Google slide, and they would drag in whichever one they wanted and then cover it with stickers that like became an about me slide that they made a flip grid about themselves and talked about how the color impacted, like after learning about that, how it impacts their own approach to the classroom and approach to people and where they'd like to grow. The one that's over on the left bottom is a way to ask people to share who everybody is in the whole class. And then at the top is like I would say a simpler way, a quicker way that each person could share out a bit about who they are. And then the slide after this one, Darren, goes into what the step that I think for me has brought about the biggest change, which is doing this monthly challenge. And so each month, I waited. I haven't published it yet. I waited to be on here to publish it, and after the show, I'll put it on the website.
I should have done a drum roll.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
It's okay. It's okay. It's small rating. Maybe they can't even see it yet.
Pretend we haven't seen it. Okay. So, what have you got for us, Steph?
Okay, this has not been published yet, but the October challenge will be out right after today. After this show, you got first preview. So every month since August, I have started to do a growth challenge. And the idea is that you can work with your team or with your students, and you can give them the whole month to work on this task. The way that you have them reflect on it can be your own. I usually ask my students, I have a document or a form that's on the website that you can use with your classes. I'll need to publish the one that's for October. Right now, there's one for September. But you can ask them to reflect on how it's helped them to grow. So for instance, for this month, golds are asked when working in a group, try starting with an actual check-in instead of going to the task. And that might be a real big challenge for a gold, but giving at least 5 minutes to do a check-in before jumping into work. And for a green, checking in with 3 others and asking them how they're doing. I've circulated this one to different colors, but the greens haven't done that. But like actually checking in and finding out if they need support and just listening and not giving advice. For the oranges, making a plan and actually listing out the steps. And when they come to their team, actually approaching them and saying, here are the pieces I want to volunteer for, which might be new for an orange to approach something with a plan, as they are really great at being like on the fly people. And our blues trying to be open to being a bit more spontaneous and volunteering maybe to do the speaking. Like I know in my class, if I'm ever coming around to a group and then I say, okay, and who can share out for this team? So asking that a blue maybe work to be a little more spontaneous and going, I can do that this time. And then asking them to reflect on how that's shifted them or changed them or helped them to grow and what they've learned from it. And each month I've given a new challenge, and they're small. I think you can't approach change by like a giant jump. And the goal is not to make you change your color, but instead to help you to learn from all the other ones. So that's been my approach in the challenges. That's been a new step this year. Yeah, I would say of all the pieces that make it my innovator project, this is probably the piece that is it for me. And I'm hoping that when I gather feedback, my ultimate goal, maybe if I say it in the universe, I can make it happen, is to gather that feedback and maybe turn it into a book of reflections on growth from that year, both from student and educators. So we'll see.
Wow, what a project!
Oh, well, that's amazing,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's been, I can't believe like the hour's nearly up. It's been so good chatting.
Didn't even realize the time. Look at that.
I know, we didn't even need, I came up with like a question slide and everything. We already got to them all, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I know, you're like great show hosts, both of you. So good. So good.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah.
Well, I of course like anything that's like a good play on words, your title for your show and everything. It was like, oh, so good. The sweet spelled SUITE. I was like, oh,
Yeah. Poor old
that was
Ben.
you, Ben.
I'm joking. I'm short.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, but I hope so. I mean, I think it's something it's simple, but at the same time there's so much complexity to it. And the reason why I went with this system of all of them is that I think that it can be approached by both students and educators. And sometimes there are ones that are out there that I would say make it really complicated. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, and that I can't learn from it. But I think for the purpose of working in education, there's enough that's pretty complicated, and I need a way to approach it where I'm like, okay, I can do this, and then they might have some other pieces. But right now, what color is showing the most, and how do I approach them with that? And that's helping a lot. Yeah,
definitely. And it's helped us massively, in the global GEG as well. We're all listed with our colours, aren't we? So we know how to deal with each other, and I think that's a great way of thinking. If you whether you're dealing with a colleague, whether you're dealing with a student, whether it's a family member. I've even had my daughter do it just to kind of. I think I mentioned to you, Steph. She's kind of.
Yeah. What color is she?
She's bluey green.
Okay. Sorry, you said, and she's going to university right now.
Well, no, she's just started sixth form college here, so so there's that element of kind of settling in with new friendship groups and things like that, and going through this helped her understand a little bit more, not just what she was like, but what other people are like, and that's really kind of taken the pressure off because it's made her realize it's not her. It's just everyone has got their own different needs and their different foci, and actually, if you appreciate that, you can cut them a bit of slack if they need to, but equally, sometimes you just give them a wide berth because they're not the kind of people we're dealing with.
I would say you should tell your daughter she's figured out the world. Like, I often walk around saying, that is not about me. Like, that response, it's not about me. I say that with students all the time. There's something else, right? There's something else behind that. It's not me. And that's okay. Like, we can still approach this conversation. When it comes to even parents talking, like, what's fueling it? It is not about me. No. So the fact that she said that at her young age, I'm like, oh, she's fine. She's got the world figured out.
Well, it's time to finish up. It's been brilliant talking to you, Steph. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Next week,
for having me.
You're very welcome. Next week we've got we're going on a field trip, aren't we?
We are indeed. We're
going virtual field tripping next week with Bonnie Gillette.
Woo-woo!
So, Ben, are you bringing the digestive biscuits or am I?
Oh, well, I'll go with the plain ones. You go with the orange ones, right?
Oi, steady. Dark chocolate for me. Dark chocolate digestives all the way.
What a way to ruin a digestive.
No, it's good for you. It's healthy. The doctor said so. Anyway, just remains to say thanks so much again, Steph, for joining us. Don't forget the staff room is now open. I've just had a message to say the staff room's open. So if you do want to come and join us for a chat, please pop in. And until next Sunday, when we're going on a field trip, bring your passports and maybe a change of clothes and your swimwear. We'll see you next week with Bonnie and have a great week in between, everyone. Take care.
See you later, everyone. Take care.
Bye, all.